Hello, fourth graders. Welcome back to embryology. Today I'm going to help you work on page 4 in your embryology workbook. This page is titled The Exciting Egg, and hopefully you were able to watch the Exciting Egg video that I posted for you in Google Classroom and on the distance learning plan. That video kind of walks you through identifying and labeling the parts of the egg, and it teaches us about the job of each part of the egg as well. So to better understand embryology, we must understand the parts of the egg and how each part helps the embryo grow. So some of the parts that you see here provide food, water, nourishment for the developing embryo. And some parts of the egg that you see here are designed to help protect the developing embryo. So the first thing I like to do after watching the video, the 4-H video, is to number my lines here, 1 through 8. That just kind of keeps us all on track. And I'm going to describe the part a little bit for you, and then we'll identify it together and write it down. So the first line here is pointing to the outside part. It's a hard protective covering of the egg. It's made of calcium carbonate, and it has 6,000 to 8,000 pores or little openings in it to let moisture and air through. So the first line here, if you haven't already identified it, you would want to write the word shell. And we do have a word bank here to help you with your spelling. So line 1 is our shell. The next line, number 2, is pointing to a thin layer just inside the shell. A thin layer just inside. So this is what we call the outer shell membrane. You don't have a lot of room to write that here, so you may want to write outer shell in this area, and then you can write membrane on the line below to make it fit. Now we're pointing to another thin layer that goes around the developing embryo. This thin layer actually protects the embryo from getting sick. It lets water and air go through, but it prevents bacteria from getting in to a certain degree, so it helps to keep the egg healthy. And if you've ever eaten a hard-boiled egg, this is that thin white layer sometimes that you have to peel off the egg. It kind of sticks to the egg as you're taking the shell off. So this is what we call the inner shell membrane. Then we're looking at a compartment of air, and this compartment actually grows bigger as the chick develops. When the chick is almost ready to hatch, it will actually break into this opening, and we can hear the chicks, we call this pipping, before they even come out of the egg, which is really cool. So this area of air is what we refer to as the air cell, number 4. Number 5 is pointing to what is commonly known as the white of the egg. There's a thick part of this and a thin part of this. It actually provides protein, water, and nutrients for the developing embryo. And so number 5 is what we refer to as the albumin. All right, number 6 is pointing to kind of what looks like twisty little ropes on each side of the yolk. This kind of holds the yolk in place and will hold the developing embryo in place so that it doesn't get crunched up against the side. It kind of, we would call this like suspending the yolk. All right, holding it in the middle, kind of tethering it down so it doesn't bump around and get hurt as it's developing. And so these twisty membranes on each side we refer to as the chalazae. Number 7 is that yellow part of the egg. It contains a lot of nutrients and food for the developing chick as it grows. And so this is what we commonly call the yolk. Cool little fact about the yolk, right before the chick hatches, it pulls the yolk into its stomach, and that provides enough nourishment for the chick so that it doesn't need to eat necessarily right when it hatches. It can kind of make it through a day or two without eating any food because it has this yolk pulled into its stomach. And then finally, this is the reproductive cell. So this would have the female's genetic information on it. This is what actually turns into the chick, and it's what we refer to as the embryo. It has to be fertilized by a rooster. but this piece itself is called a blastodisc. So number 8 is blastodisc. Once it becomes fertilized, we call it a blastoderm. Some science books will refer to it as the germinal disc as well, but in our word bank here, we're going to use this term blastodisc. So I'm just going to take a moment and let my camera hover over one that is completed, so you can double check your work. 1 shell, 2 outer shell membrane, 3 inner shell membrane, 4 air cell, 5 albumin, 6 chalazae, 7 yolk, and 8 blastodisc. And again, I just put in that little side term. Some science literature will refer to that as the germinal disc. Okay, so we're just going to come down now to the bottom area. I will read through the descriptions. Again, I numbered 1 through 8. I will read the description for you and help you identify that part. Now, instead of using pictures, they're using words. So number 1, hard protective covering of the egg made of calcium carbonate, has 6,000 to 8,000 pores. I bet you knew that. Shell. The hard shell is connected to this thin layer. Again, this would be your outer shell membrane. Next, you have a second thin layer around the watery part of the egg, protects the embryo from getting sick. This is what we refer to, as the inner shell membrane. This increases with size with age, where the embryo takes its first breath and becomes a chick. This forms between 2 shell membranes. This is your air cell. Number 5, also called the white of the egg, the main source of protein and water for the embryo. This is what we refer to scientifically as the albumin. Tightly wrapped membranes keeps the yolk centered in place. This is your chalazae. Main food source for the growing embryo, contains fat, vitamins, and minerals. This is your yolk. And if you've ever compared a farm egg to a store-bought grocery egg, you will notice that a farm egg's yolk is much more orange and rich in color versus the store-bought eggs are often lighter yellow in color. And then finally, white spot on the surface of every yolk. This spot contains only the female cells. Non-fertile means it will not develop into a chicken if it's non-fertile. It means there wasn't a rooster near the hen to contribute to that cell. And so this is what we refer to as the blastodisc. So now I'm going to go up to my answer key, and I will hover here for a moment. If you need to pause your video so you can double check your answers, but I also included an answer key along with the embryology books that were delivered to your home. So hopefully this will help you in completing page 4.